Engines scream over the rooftops of Tokyo. The sky trembles with noise so sharp it shakes loose dust from the rafters of wooden houses below. Pilots, strapped into their cockpits, squint against the sun as shadows dart across the haze. But then, without warning, the horizon splits open and the impossible happens. Out of the mist, fast, silver-shaped streak past. They are not bombers. They are not Zeros. They are something else entirely. The first reaction is disbelief. Eyes widen, throats tighten, hands cling harder to control sticks. Some pilots whisper quick prayers under their breath, others mutter curses, but all feel the same jolt of recognition. These machines are faster, leaner, hungrier than anything they have ever seen before. P-51 Mustangs. The Japanese pilots had been told stories of American planes, clumsy, underpowered, easy prey for the agile Zero. Training manuals insisted that Yankee pilots were amateurs who relied on numbers, not skill. Yet in this moment, high above the capital, all that propaganda evaporates. Because the P-51 does not crawl. It lunges. It cuts through the air like a blade through silk. And for the first time, Japanese pilots taste what it feels like to be prey. 1-0 peels away, desperate to climb and meet the intruder head-on. But the Mustang dives with terrifying speed, nose pointed like a spear. In seconds it's behind the Japanese fighter, and tracer rounds cut across the morning sky. The Zero spirals, trailing smoke, the pilot unable to even react. The rest of the formation flinches as though struck themselves. The truth is undeniable now. The air belongs to the Americans. Confusion ripples through the cockpits. How did they appear so deep over Tokyo? Japanese fighters had always counted on distance, on American planes running low on fuel before they reached the heart of the homeland. Yet these machines slice through the clouds effortlessly, as if range is no obstacle. Some pilots mutter in disbelief, impossible. But nothing feels impossible anymore. The sound alone is enough to rattle them. The steady growl of the P-51's Merlin engine doesn't sputter like their own. It roars with confidence, as if mocking every sluggish maneuver. And the speed, it isn't just faster, it is almost unnatural. One pilot later recalled it felt like chasing shadows that were always 2 moves ahead. Japan was once owned by Britain, one pilot blurts nervously into the radio, a bitter, nonsensical joke to break the tension. No one laughs. Perhaps because, in that moment, it almost feels true, that their skies, their land, their war, all of it is being owned by someone else. Down below, Tokyo stirs uneasily. Civilians shield their eyes, watching specks move in lethal arcs across the heavens. They can't tell which machines are theirs, which are American. All they hear is the thunder, and all they see are trails of smoke curling downward, proof that someone is losing. In the air, the Japanese pilots fight instinct with training. They turn into the attackers, dive at angles, pull every trick they know. But the Mustangs respond instantly, rolling, climbing, vanishing, then reappearing right behind them. For every Zero that tries to line up a shot, a Mustang slides into its blind spot. For every burst of fire, an American fighter replies with deadlier precision. The Zero had once been the terror of the Pacific. Agile, lightweight, revered for its tight turns. But over Tokyo, that legacy collapses. The Mustang not only matches its agility but surpasses it. Where the Zero struggles for altitude, the P-51 climbs with ease. Where the Zero wobbles in a dive, the Mustang slices through clean. The pride of Japan's Air Force suddenly feels outdated, like a relic forced to duel with the future. Time blurs inside the cockpit. Minutes feel like seconds. Sweat drips into eyes that cannot blink. The hands of young pilots tremble, not from fear of death, they had long accepted that, but from the realization that the enemy is untouchable. One pilot pulls hard left, straining against his straps, trying to shake the shadow behind him. For a heartbeat he thinks he's free. Then the Mustang dips its wing, slides into place, and fires. The sky flashes, and the Zero shatters. Another attempts a desperate dive toward the city. He hopes the clutter of buildings will scare the American away. But the Mustang follows, unrelenting, forcing him lower and lower until the horizon itself becomes a weapon. He pulls up too late. For the survivors, every second becomes a question: how long can they last? How do you fight an enemy that doesn't just outnumber you, but outflies you in every direction? And in that question lies a bitter truth. They were not supposed to face this. American bombers, yes, giant machines, slow targets, meat for a skilled hunter. But this? These Mustangs? This was not in the manual. This was not in the propaganda films. The Japanese pilots had been promised skies they could control. But in the heat of that morning, those promises crumble like ash. Somewhere in the chaos, a young pilot grips his stick so tightly his knuckles turn white. He glances at the sun, sees the silver shapes darting across the glare, and feels his chest tighten. He wants to believe he can fight them. He wants to believe the training, the slogans, the speeches. But deep down, he knows. The Mustang is something different. Something lethal. Something that doesn't play by the rules he was taught. And here's the haunting part: if you turn away from this story, if you shrug it off like another tale from a long war, you risk losing sight of what those men saw in that moment. They saw the world shift. They saw the sky itself betray them. Missing this truth is like walking away from history's edge and pretending it never mattered. Don't make that mistake. Because if you look away now, you'll never feel what it was like when the P-51s arrived over Tokyo. The battle rages on, but already, the outcome is written in the air. Smoke trails twist downward. Parachutes bloom too late. The once fearless defenders are scattering, each one praying for a miracle that will not come. And above it all, the Mustangs glide, confident, merciless, their wings gleaming in the rising sun. Tokyo's skies, once a shield, have become a cage. And inside that cage, the hunters have become the hunted. The first reports arrive not from the pilots, but from the ground. Spotters in Tokyo look up and see shapes moving where shapes should not be. The sky, usually heavy with slow-moving bombers, now flickers with something leaner, sharper. Trails slash across the horizon, not steady lines, but arcs, violent, confident strokes that cross and recross each other. At first, the civilians think it's a trick of the sun. Then they hear it, a deep, pulsing growl unlike the thin whine of Japanese engines. The sound alone unnerves them. It feels like a declaration: we own this sky now. In the command bunkers, Japanese officers gather around maps, hands trembling over compasses and protractors. The word keeps repeating: Mustang. Some don't believe it. Impossible, one says, pointing at the map. No fighter can reach Tokyo. Not from the Marianas. The fuel, look at the fuel. But disbelief cracks when the first frantic radio calls pour in. Voices of their own pilots, strained and ragged, too fast, they cut us apart, they don't break formation, static swallows the rest. The officers exchange glances. They had been preparing for bombers. They had told their men the American fighters couldn't follow that far. Now, reality spills across the airwaves like oil across water. Above the city, the Mustangs carve their signature into the clouds. The Japanese defenders are not unskilled, they climb, they dive, they follow the manuals printed in bold ink. But the manuals are already outdated. Every tactic collapses before it's even tried. The formations meant to corral bombers dissolve under the speed of the escort. It isn't just defeat. It is humiliation. To train for years, to be told the Zero is untouchable, and then to watch a foreign machine twist around it as though it were a training toy, that breaks something deeper than bone. On the ground, civilians tilt their heads upward. They cannot tell which fighter is theirs and which is American. All they know is that the enemy no longer looks vulnerable. The Mustangs descend in pairs, wings flashing, then climb again with such power that it seems the air itself yields to them. Children clutch at their mothers' hands. The adults do not speak. They know the balance of the war is shifting right above their rooftops. In the mess tents, hours later, young pilots mutter to each other. They describe the Mustangs in tones usually reserved for storms or earthquakes, something beyond human scale. One says it felt like chasing his own shadow. Another confesses he never even saw the attack that sent him diving for his life. And then, a silence falls, because no one wants to admit the thought aloud: if the Americans can bring these fighters here, then the home islands are no longer safe. The Mustangs do not just escort bombers. They toy with the air. Their fuel tanks, slung under the wings, mean they can cross oceans, fight, and still return home. That fact spreads like a rumor among Japanese ranks, but rumors harden into truth when men watch the silver fighters peel away from the bombers, dive deep into their formations, then rejoin the bombers again, calm, unhurried, assured. That is the part that unsettles them most. The calm. The confidence. The Americans fly as if victory is already theirs. Back at the bunkers, senior officers argue over how to respond. Some demand new tactics: attack in waves, sacrifice half the squadron to let the other half through. Others simply lower their eyes. Because the truth is inescapable. It doesn't matter how brave the pilots are. It doesn't matter how sharp their maneuvers are. The Mustang renders courage irrelevant. At night, the city buzzes with whispers. Families wonder why the air raids are changing. Some say the Americans have found a secret base hidden on a captured island closer than anyone thought. Others believe the enemy has discovered fuel beyond science. Children repeat the word Mustang like it's a ghost story told before bed. And perhaps that is what the plane becomes, a ghost in the sky. One moment visible, the next gone, then suddenly behind you. A presence that cannot be anticipated. Think about it for a moment. These men, raised on slogans promising Japan's superiority, suddenly find themselves powerless against a machine that breaks every rule they've been taught. Imagine watching the sky you thought was yours ripped away in a single day. Now think of yourself: if you walk away from this story, if you shrug it off as just another battle, you're doing exactly what they did, pretending you still control what you don't. Don't starve your own mind of the truth. Subscribe, stay here, because ignoring history only leaves you defenseless when it repeats. The Mustangs linger long after the bombers have dropped their loads. They fly lazy circles, almost taunting, as if to say they have fuel to burn, time to waste, lives to spare. Below, the Japanese defenses are in tatters. Anti-aircraft guns fire wildly, but the angles never align. Pilots who return to base climb out of their cockpits wordless, heads down, unable to meet the eyes of their mechanics. One officer writes in his diary that night, *, "We have lost the air. The city no longer belongs to us." Tokyo had braced for bombs. What it received instead was revelation. The revelation that the enemy had built something unstoppable, and worse, that it was already here, above their heads, untouchable. The arrival of the Mustang was not just an event. It was a shadow that spread across every barracks, every home, every heart. And no matter how much the officers tried to frame it as a challenge, the men knew it for what it was. The beginning of the end. It happens in an instant. One moment, the Japanese pilots are locked in their formations, focusing on the steady hum of their engines. The next, a flash of silver cuts across the sky in a way that defies their training. It's too fast. Too sudden. The P-51 Mustang blurs as it dips, then climbs, cutting through the air like it owns it. For the first time since the war began, the Japanese pilots feel the stark, suffocating weight of their helplessness. The Mustang is not just fast. It is a blur, a streak that moves in and out of sight, faster than any human reaction. To try and keep up feels like chasing a lightning bolt. They press harder on their throttles, trying to close the gap, trying to match the American fighter's speed, but the Mustang just moves faster, disappearing into the horizon before they can even line it up in their sights. Every attempt to fight feels like a lost cause, as if the enemy is playing a game with rules they don't even understand. One pilot, fresh-faced and eager, watches as the Mustang outpaces him on a steep climb. His hands are tight around the controls, his knuckles white, but even as he pushes his Zero to its limits, the gap between them only widens. The Mustang's climb is effortless, as if it were part of the sky itself, leaving the Japanese pilot choking on his own dust. He tries to catch up, but the Mustang already loops back around, gaining altitude, moving in a way that no one on his side could match. It's no longer just a battle of machines. It's a battle of speed, and the enemy's speed is crushing. The radio crackles with urgency. Pilots yell to each other in a language now strained by desperation. Commands are thrown out, but they feel useless. Form up. Attack in pairs. One officer demands, but his voice cracks, the doubt creeping in. How can they form up when the Mustangs never let them get close enough? How can they strategize when every approach is blocked before it even begins? They are too fast, another pilot admits under his breath, though it's a bitter admission, one he doesn't want to make but knows is true. It's not just the speed of the Mustangs that gets to him. It's the way they make him feel like his plane, his skill, his tactics are utterly irrelevant. The Zero had once been the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, the symbol of their dominance in the sky. Now, it feels like nothing more than a toy, clumsy, slow, and out of its depth. Above Tokyo, the P-51s dance through the sky with ease, always moving, always controlling the pace. The Japanese pilots push harder, trying to break through, trying to catch a glimpse of the enemy, but every time they think they have an advantage, the Mustangs slip away like water through their fingers. The Mustangs are not playing fair. They don't just dive into battle and fight. They seem to control the entire sky, guiding the Japanese into their traps. With every dive and roll, they seem to mock the Japanese pilots' every move, daring them to follow, then turning the tables when they do. The Zeros, which once ruled the skies, are now outclassed in a way they can't fathom. They chase shadows, but they never catch them. From the ground, a different kind of chaos is unfolding. Civilians watch the streaks of light in the sky, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. The sound of the Mustang's engines echoes down to them, deep and pulsing, like a heartbeat of war. There's no mistaking it now, the sky is full of death, but the kind of death they didn't expect. This wasn't supposed to happen. The bombers, they could understand. The Zeros, they understood. But this was beyond comprehension. The young pilots can't shake the feeling that they're being hunted. They push their Zeros into tight turns, hoping to outmaneuver the Mustangs, but the P-51s follow with ease, anticipating every move. The Americans know exactly what they're doing. They're not just faster, they're always where they need to be. The Japanese can't even get close enough to lock on their targets. One young pilot, shaken and sweating, grips his controls harder than ever. He watches as a Mustang zooms past, moving with an elegance that feels unnatural. He wants to chase it, to fight, but every instinct tells him it's useless. He's caught in a game where the rules are stacked against him, and it's not just about skill anymore. It's about something more fundamental, the simple fact that the Mustang is faster and no matter how well he flies, he's never going to match that speed. Back in the command centers, the officers know the situation is slipping out of their hands. The radio chatter grows frantic. Orders are shouted, but they lose their meaning with every failed attempt to intercept the Mustangs. Some pilots are still trying to adapt, holding on to their pride, pushing their Zeros to limits that are starting to feel like suicide missions. They dive, they weave, they try everything in their power to close the gap, but the Mustangs just keep moving. A senior officer, watching the chaos unfold, grits his teeth. "We must adapt," he says through clenched teeth, though the words feel hollow in his own mouth. The enemy has already adapted. The Mustangs are not just faster, they're in complete control, and they know it. The radio crackles again with another transmission. They're circling back. They're everywhere. It's the last message from one pilot who never makes it home. His voice fades into the static, a final surrender to the speed of the Mustang. The others hear his last words and know what they mean. This isn't just a battle of pilots. This is a battle of survival. And the American fighters are winning without even breaking a sweat. It's hard to fight something that doesn't feel human. The Mustang, sleek and deadly, almost seems like a force of nature, an entity in and of itself. The Japanese pilots, fighting with everything they have, realize in the pit of their stomachs that no matter how hard they push, the Mustangs will always be one step ahead. It's the worst kind of warfare, fighting an enemy you can't even see, let alone catch. But here's the cruelest part: if you turn your back on this story now, if you choose to walk away and ignore the fear those men felt, you're denying yourself the full weight of their struggle. You're letting it slip through your fingers, just like they let the Mustangs slip through theirs. Don't be left in the dark. Subscribe now, and never forget the power of history. The speed of the Mustang was only the beginning. And you don't want to miss what comes next. As the battle rages, the skies above Tokyo turn from blue to gray with smoke. The Japanese pilots fight on, but the sense of inevitability weighs on them. They are no longer playing for victory. They are playing for survival. The Mustangs remain untouchable. Above them, the sun casts long shadows across the clouds, as if nature itself is watching. The final outcome is written in every maneuver of the Mustang. The Japanese have no way to respond, no answer to the American superiority. And they know, as the skies grow darker, that they are losing the most vital battle of the war, the one that decides who controls the air. The realization hits like a blow to the chest. There is no escape. Not from the P-51 Mustangs. The sky has become their battleground, and the Japanese pilots, once the masters of the air, are now trapped in a cruel game they cannot win. It starts with the silence. The radio chatter dies down, replaced by the sounds of engines, the deep hum of the Mustangs as they move in and out of view. The Japanese pilots, once so confident, now feel small in the vastness of the sky. The Mustangs don't just engage, they dominate. Each time a Zero breaks formation, each time a pilot tries to break free, the Mustang is there. There's no room to maneuver, no space to think. Just the cold, sharp presence of the enemy, always close, always watching. In the cockpit, everything changes. One pilot, young and eager, desperately tries to shake off the Mustang tailing him. He twists and turns, pulling his Zero into a steep climb, but the Mustang follows with ease, matching every move. It's like the American fighter can read his mind, anticipating every move before it even happens. His heart pounds in his chest, not from the physical strain but from the crushing weight of the realization that he cannot escape. The Mustang is everywhere, and it's always faster. As the young pilot pulls into a sharp turn, the Mustang does something unexpected. It pulls ahead, diving down with terrifying speed, cutting across his line of sight. In a panic, he jerks the controls, his hands shaking. It's too late. The Mustang fires. The last thing he hears before the radio goes silent is the roar of the Mustang's engines, as if it were laughing at him. On the ground, the men at the command center are watching the battle unfold, their faces drawn, their eyes glued to the reports. Every failed attempt to engage the Mustangs feels like a personal loss. One officer slams his fist against the desk, cursing under his breath. "How are they doing this?" he mutters, barely able to understand what is happening in the skies. They've always been able to control the battlefield. They've always been able to adapt. But this? This is different. The Mustangs aren't just fighting, they're playing a different game altogether. Every time the Japanese pilots engage, they're outclassed. And every time the enemy pulls away, they do so with a confidence that only makes the failure more painful. The Japanese high command begins to realize that this isn't a single battle, but the beginning of a shift in the entire air war. The P-51s have taken control, and the Japanese forces have no answer. Back in the sky, the remaining pilots, now scattered and exhausted, are losing their resolve. They fly in silence, the weight of the failure sinking into their bones. The young pilots who once believed they could turn the tide are now starting to feel the burden of hopelessness. Their thoughts are no longer on the mission but on survival. The Zeros, their faithful fighters, have become unreliable tools in a war that is moving too fast for them to catch up. One veteran pilot, a man who had once been the pride of the Imperial Navy, finds himself flying alone, unable to catch sight of his squadron. He feels the weight of the Mustang's shadow hovering over him, even though he can't see it. His mind races. Should he try to return to base? Should he engage again? His hands grip the controls, but even he knows it's futile. The Mustang has proven its superiority, and it has shown that no matter how skilled the pilot, no matter how much experience they have, it will always be faster. The realization sinks in, they are no longer the hunters. They are the prey. It is then that something shifts. A few of the younger pilots begin to question everything they've been taught. In the early days of the war, they had been told that their superiority in the sky was a given. They were the future of Japan's military might, the pride of their nation. But now, with every failed engagement, those beliefs begin to crumble. They look at each other in silence, no longer certain of their place in this war. One young man, his hands trembling, wonders how they were so blind. They had been trained for victory, told they were invincible. But now, the P-51s have shattered that illusion. The Mustang is everything they were told the Japanese fighter could be, and more. It's a machine designed for victory, designed to win the air. He feels a knot in his stomach as he wonders if his nation even has the capacity to build something like that. The P-51 Mustang is not just a fighter. It's a symbol of everything they cannot compete with. The Mustangs don't stop. They keep coming. A few Zeros attempt to engage again, their pilots pushing their planes to the limit, hoping for a lucky shot. But the Mustangs are always ahead, always outmaneuvering them, always keeping the advantage. The Japanese pilots are no longer fighting for victory, they are fighting to survive. But even survival seems out of reach. They are trapped in the sky, surrounded by an enemy they can't outrun, can't outfight, and can't escape. The American fighters strike with precision, systematically picking off one Zero after another. The Japanese pilots can do nothing but watch, powerless against the speed and might of the P-51s. The once proud warriors of Japan are now reduced to mere targets, their attempts to retaliate as futile as swatting at a shadow. It's a bitter truth. The battlefield has shifted, and there's no going back. The Japanese Air Force, once the pride of an empire, is now a broken machine, struggling to keep up with an enemy that is more advanced, more powerful, and more determined. The P-51 Mustang has shattered their illusions, leaving nothing but the cold, hard reality of their inferiority. They were not prepared for this. They were not prepared for a fighter that could outmatch them at every turn. In the distance, another Mustang swoops down, its sleek form cutting through the air like a predator closing in on its prey. The Japanese pilots look up, and for the first time, they know there is no escaping it. The Mustang will always be faster. It will always be the hunter. And if you turn away now, if you ignore the truth of how the P-51 Mustang shattered the Japanese pilots' confidence, you're doing exactly what they did. Pretending it wasn't real. Pretending it didn't matter. But it does matter. The truth is here, in the sky, in the struggle, in the loss. If you walk away now, you'll never truly understand how one machine, the Mustang, rewrote the air war. Don't let that be your mistake. Stay with this story. Subscribe now, and never miss how history changes in the blink of an eye. The realization is slow and painful, like watching the last traces of daylight fade as the night takes over. The Japanese pilots have fought hard, each one giving their best in the hopes of a breakthrough, but now, there's no denying it, their tactics aren't enough. The P-51 Mustang has dominated every encounter, leaving nothing but wreckage and shattered confidence in its wake. There's no turning back now. One pilot, still new to combat, stares at his instruments, hands trembling on the controls. He had entered this fight with hopes high, knowing the Zero was superior in maneuverability and speed. But what good is speed when you can't even catch your enemy? The Mustang has proven that it's not just faster, it's smarter. It's a ghost in the sky, always just out of reach, always circling, always watching. The officers on the ground try to regroup, but their voices crack with doubt. Adapt, one shouts, pounding the table. We must adapt. But how do you adapt when the very foundation of your superiority has been shattered in front of you? The Zero was once the king of the skies, and now it's a pawn, scrambling to avoid the hunter's bite. The younger pilots begin to feel it first. It's the quiet dread that creeps in when you realize you've lost the advantage, when the battle has turned against you, and no matter what you do, the Mustang is always a step ahead. One of them, fresh-faced and eager, mutters to himself, "We're being outpaced by a machine." It's the first time he said it aloud, but the words sting like a slap in the face. They don't just have to fight the enemy, they have to fight their own growing sense of inadequacy. On the ground, the high command watches the battle unfold through binoculars, frustration building like a storm cloud. They've lost ground before, but never like this. Never in the sky. Plans are made, new orders are given, but the enemy's speed, their superiority, feels like a wall they can't scale. More guns, one officer demands. We need more fighters, better armament. Another argues that they need to send more Zeros to intercept, but the reality sets in with a cold finality: more Zeros won't fix the problem. The Mustangs don't just defeat them, they expose the fundamental flaw. The Zeros are no match for the P-51 in any scenario. The command center is alive with desperate strategies, forming tighter groups, diving from greater heights, attacking from angles no one has tried before. Go faster, one officer insists. Outrun them. Outmaneuver them. But the younger pilots know it's all just words. The enemy is too fast, too ruthless. The P-51 doesn't need to follow the rules of engagement. It writes its own. Back in the sky, the pilots try again. The high command's orders are clear: adapt. Fight smarter. Attack together. The Zeros climb to the sky once more, now flying in more concentrated formations. The hope is that together, their numbers will overcome the P-51's speed. They swarm, as they had been taught, looking for any weakness to exploit. But each time they close in, the Mustang flares to life, cutting through the group with speed that leaves their efforts looking childish. It's like a predator playing with its prey, never too eager to kill but always waiting for the perfect moment. One Zero attempts to close the gap, his engine screaming as he pulls hard to the left, hoping to cut off a Mustang's tail. For a moment, he thinks he's done it, his gun sight is locked on, and he squeezes the trigger. But the Mustang is already gone, twisting and diving in ways that defy the laws of physics. It's not just faster, it's more skilled. In that brief moment of triumph, the Japanese pilot feels the sting of his own desperation. He has already failed. For the younger pilots, this is the breaking point. They've learned what it feels like to be powerless. They've felt the frustration of trying their hardest only to watch the enemy escape. But something else happens in that moment. It's the quiet realization that their pride is no longer enough. The Zero, once the pride of Japan's Air Force, is now a tool of desperation, pushed beyond its limits. They have no choice but to adapt, or to face extinction. One veteran pilot watches as a squadron of Zeros forms up in a last-ditch effort to engage. His heart sinks as he recognizes the futility in it. The P-51s don't just fight. They control. He can see it clearly now. there is no victory to be found in fighting this way. If they're going to survive, they need a new plan. But even as he thinks this, he knows it's too late. The enemy has already won. The Zeros are no match. The fight has shifted beyond their reach. As the Mustangs circle overhead, confident and relentless, the Japanese pilots begin to understand that this is no longer about tactics. It's about survival. They are not fighting to win, they are fighting to make it through the next minute, the next second, and hoping for a miracle they know won't come. The once proud Imperial Japanese Navy is now a broken shadow of its former self, unable to cope with the speed and precision of the Mustang. And here's the thing, if you choose to ignore the story unfolding here, if you walk away without understanding the true cost of that realization, you might just miss the most critical moment of this battle. The moment where everything shifts, and you understand how speed alone can change the course of history. Don't let that be your regret. Subscribe now, because you're about to see how the air war over Japan evolved, and why the P-51 Mustang is more than just a fighter. It's a symbol of the war that would change everything. The sound of the Mustangs reaches Tokyo before the pilots see them. A low, rhythmic hum, growing louder and louder as the sky darkens with their shadows. The Japanese pilots know what's coming. They've seen it before, felt it, the helpless feeling of trying to chase something that never tires, never falters. But now, it's no longer just a handful of Mustangs. It's a swarm. A sky filled with the enemy, their confidence visible in every movement, every arc, every pass. There is no room to breathe. No room to escape. The Zero pilots, broken and bruised from weeks of losing, scramble to form up once more. They are outnumbered, outclassed, and outflown, but they do what they've been trained to do, follow orders, engage, and hope for the best. Their formations are tighter this time, every pilot praying that together, they can stand a chance. But it's clear now, there is no chance. One veteran, his face drawn tight with exhaustion, stares ahead. His mind flashes back to the early days of the war when they would tear through enemy bombers, proud of their skill, confident in their superiority. But now, the fight feels different. The P-51 seem to move as one. They don't just follow their prey, they herd it. Every turn, every dive, feels like an inevitability, like they're being pulled into a noose that keeps tightening. The first wave of Zeros dives straight into the heart of the Mustang swarm, hoping to break through, to find the gap that must exist. It doesn't. They don't even get close. One by one, the Mustangs rip into the formation, picking them off with surgical precision. A few Zeros attempt evasive maneuvers, but the Mustangs respond instantly. There's no time to think, no time to react. The Japanese pilots begin to understand, this isn't a fight anymore. This is slaughter. For the first time in the war, a thought creeps into their minds, a thought that was never allowed before. What if we don't win this fight? What if Tokyo falls? What if we don't survive this? It's a question that goes unanswered, but it lingers in the air, as oppressive as the smoke swirling around the battlefield. There is no answer. There is only the sound of the Mustangs. There is only the knowledge that they cannot escape, cannot outrun the inevitable. The air grows heavier as the second wave of Japanese pilots rushes to meet the Mustangs. The younger pilots, those with less experience, are desperate. They've been taught to fight, to be brave, to follow orders. But nothing in their training prepared them for this. Nothing told them that the P-51 Mustang would turn the sky into an impossible battleground. One young pilot, shaking with fear, locks his sights onto a Mustang, desperate to make his mark. He follows it through a series of twists and turns, his engine screaming, but every time he thinks he has the advantage, the Mustang slides away, faster than his mind can process. For a moment, he's hopeful. Then the Mustang pulls away, faster than he could ever hope to catch. He tries again, and again, and again. But it's useless. The P-51s are always ahead. Always out of reach. On the ground, Tokyo civilians can only watch as their defenders are picked apart, one by one. The sky is filled with the sound of engines and gunfire, but the sense of control is gone. There is no hope left. Even the streets, once filled with bustling crowds, seem to hold their breath, as if waiting for a fate they can't escape. In the command centers, the officers stand silent, unable to process what's happening. The battle has already shifted. The bombs may still fall, but they've lost the war in the sky. The P-51s have proven what the Japanese high command feared, that control of the air was not just a matter of strategy, it was a matter of technology. And the Americans have the better machines. The sky grows darker as more Zeros fall, their pilots spiraling toward the ground, their last moments a blur of fire and smoke. One of the older pilots, once proud and confident, stares at the horizon, his heart sinking as he watches the last of the Zeros vanish from the radar. He's exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally. They fought so hard. They gave everything. And for what? To watch the sky they ruled become the domain of the Mustangs? His mind flashes back to a moment during the early days of the war, when the Japanese planes had swept across the Pacific with ease, when they had been invincible. But that was before the Mustangs. Before the speed. Before the certainty of defeat. In the final moments of the confrontation, the Japanese pilots have nothing left to give. Some of them are still trying to fight, trying to make something of this battle, but they know deep down that it's over. They have been beaten. Not just by enemy fire, but by speed, by technology. They were outclassed before they even had a chance to fight. And then, just as quickly as it began, the battle ends. The sky clears, leaving behind only the wreckage of the fight. The Mustangs are gone, having left their mark on the battlefield and on the men who fought to defend it. The Japanese pilots, battered and broken, return to base. They are still alive, but it's clear, they are not the same men who took to the sky hours ago. They are no longer the rulers of the sky. They are the survivors of a war they could never win. And now, here's the truth. If you turn away from this chapter, if you let the gravity of this moment slip away, you'll never truly understand what it means to lose a war in the sky. To watch the very thing you thought you owned slip away from you. To realize, too late, that speed and technology can change everything. Don't miss the full story. Subscribe now. Because you're about to see how this battle, this very moment, shaped everything that came after. The battle is over. The sky above Tokyo, once filled with the thunderous roar of engines and the flashing streaks of tracer fire, is now eerily quiet. The few remaining Japanese pilots return to base, their cockpits empty of the adrenaline that once drove them. Their minds are clouded with exhaustion, disbelief, and a bitter truth they can't escape. The Mustangs have left their mark. And it is a mark that will remain forever. On the ground, the officers remain silent, their faces pale and weary. They know what's coming. The reality of defeat has settled in. The P-51s have proven their dominance, and the once feared Zeros are now obsolete. The technology gap is too wide. The war in the skies has shifted irreparably. There is no anger in their faces, only a deep, sorrowful recognition of the truth. The Japanese had believed they could fight a war with skill, with courage, with willpower. But now, they understand that the enemy is not just another set of human warriors. The P-51 Mustang represents something far more powerful than any individual or army. It represents an era of warfare defined by technology. In the weeks that follow, the pilots who survived the battle are haunted by the same thought: how could we have not seen it coming? The answer is simple, yet cruel. The P-51 was not just another fighter. It was an innovation, a leap forward in the art of war. And no matter how many Zeros they sent into the air, no matter how hard they fought, they could not match the Mustang's speed, agility, or firepower. It was too advanced, too efficient. The younger pilots, once filled with the hope of victory, are the ones most affected. Their world has crumbled around them, not because of failure, but because of something they couldn't control, the enemy's technological superiority. They had been taught to fight, to rely on their skill and training. But against the P-51, skill alone was not enough. The war had shifted, and they were now fighting a battle they could not win. One of the surviving pilots, a young man from Osaka, is one of the first to truly grasp the full scope of the Mustang's power. He sits in the barracks, staring out at the fading light of day, his thoughts a tangled mess of frustration and fear. He had entered this war with a sense of invincibility. The Zero was the best, and he was its best pilot. But that confidence had shattered in the face of the P-51. For the first time, he understands that it wasn't just about fighting hard. It was about adapting, about staying one step ahead. And in that, the Mustangs had already won. The legacy of the Mustang begins to grow in the minds of the pilots who survived. It is no longer just a machine. It is a symbol of the future, a sign that the battlefield is no longer ruled by man's courage alone. The Japanese pilots begin to speak of it in hushed tones, as if acknowledging its power would somehow make it more real, more inescapable. Some even begin to respect the P-51, not as an enemy, but as a testament to the new world of war, one where speed, technology, and innovation ruled the skies. But that respect is laced with bitterness. They cannot escape the fact that the P-51 has shattered their confidence, their beliefs, and their sense of superiority. The Zero, once the pride of the Japanese Air Force, is now a relic of the past. The men who flew it, once champions, are now left to wonder how they could have been so outmatched by an enemy they had been taught to underestimate. As the months pass, the Japanese pilots slowly come to terms with their new reality. The P-51 Mustang is not just a fighter, it is a symbol of a new age in warfare. It is the future, and the Japanese are stuck in the past, unable to match the technological advancements of the Americans. For those who survived the air battles, the Mustang's legacy is a constant reminder of what they failed to achieve, a reminder that no matter how hard they fought, they could never outrun the future. And here's the truth you don't want to miss: if you walk away now, if you ignore the full impact of the Mustang's legacy, you'll never understand how the tides of war truly shifted. This isn't just about planes or dogfights, it's about an entire shift in the way wars are fought. The P-51 Mustang redefined the skies. It showed that the future of war wasn't about just skill or courage. It was about adaptation, about technological superiority. And if you think you can turn away from that truth, you're missing the most important lesson of all. Stay with this story. Subscribe now, and understand how the P-51 Mustang did more than win battles, it changed the course of history.